All right, welcome to another writing focus lecture. This time we're going to look at how you can present your information in your writing to present a tone. And these same techniques can be used if you have a presentation over what you've been gathering your data on. Let's go ahead and start with a screen share. And let me get this nice and big for you. So how you present the information that you found does matter more than you know. It's in how you decide to present your information that the tone is really set. There are two great ways to really grab your reader by the short hairs and say, listen up. These key aspects are through statistics and visuals. The following slides are examples from real projects and presentations that have been used to grab reader attention. I want you to carefully consider for yourself why this grabbed your attention, and then we'll rehash afterwards. I will read from the notes of the slides exactly as it was presented so that you can hear the written context, which would have worked just as well for a paper format. Let me share with you some startling numbers. The average ransomware demand on a personal computer, $679. People who use the same password everywhere, 65%. Web attacks targeting people and businesses every day in 2015, 1 million. What a data breach could cost an enterprise, 26.4 million. New malware threats released every day. Every day, 1 million. How often identity fraud hits another victim? Every 2 seconds. Devices that are vulnerable to unauthorized access, 4 million. Facebook accounts that are compromised per day, 600,000. Personal information records that were stolen or lost in 2015, 500 million. You might be thinking, well, I'm just a small to mid-sized business. Hackers aren't going to bother with me. Wrong. IEAT Group, which provides research for the financial services industry, asked controllers at 110 small and mid-sized businesses in June 2011 about attempted online fraud. Researchers found that 1/3 of those businesses surveyed had experienced online fraud attempts. Criminals are indiscriminate in their targets of smaller organizations, and the crimes seem to pay off. For example, a small town in upstate New York lost $139,000, and a Catholic diocese forfeited over $500,000, both to thieves who stole employee credentials to initiate transfers from their bank accounts. Fortunately, preventative steps to help defend our company's assets don't require us to be experts or spend a lot of money. It's really a matter of educating ourselves about internet risks and then developing practical habits that strengthen our security when we're online. More recent numbers show that 84% of companies surveyed worldwide experienced some sort of fraud incident, with 86% reporting at least one instance of a cyber attack. To top it off, 70% reported security issues. Why should this matter to local businesses? According to statistics from 2017, 58% of malware attack victims are categorized as small to mid-sized businesses. That is over half of all malware attacks, which could have been minimized with the right knowledge and training. To make matters worse, the average cost of a cyber attack comes to just over $1 million. Having to pay such a substantial amount of money to deal with a cyber attack leads to 60% of small to mid-sized businesses failing within 6 months of the attack. They simply are not able to recuperate their losses. In addition to this, not only can a cyber attack ruin a business financially, but a breach of security could harm a company's reputation, causing further damage to their monetary flow. Stop for a moment And I want you to consider the following questions. What caught your attention? Why did that particular part catch your attention? How did this presentation use the combination of ethos, pathos, and logos to keep you invested in what was being said? And how could you use the same types of techniques in your own writing? Each slide used a different technique that consisted of statistical data with large numbers, ratios, also known as fractions, and percentages. Now that you've seen some of the techniques that are used to present information, let's look at the considerations you should make before deciding on whether to give your facts as a numerical value, a ratio or fraction, or a percentage. If you go back through each, you will see that each individual slide uses a different technique of presenting the facts and statistics that keeps the audience's attention. Let's look at each of these slides again and see how it works. This slide presented all numbers. Did you notice that the numbers and amounts presented were rather large numbers? The fact that these were large numbers is what made this slide so unsettling. The bigger the number, the bigger the emotional reaction, whether positive if you're talking about profit margins, or negative if you're talking about these types of things. With this slide, you're shown a fraction, which is also considered a ratio. That means that 1 out of every 3 small to mid-sized businesses is at risk, or was at the time of this data in 2011. Do you think that number would have been as impressive if it was presented as 33%? Probably not. That sounds like a much smaller number, so it's not going to have your audience seeing the ideas and issues as a big deal. But when you present it as 1 in every 3, the ratio or fraction version, suddenly they're sitting up and taking notice. Even the graphic can have influence on your audience. What if the reverse were true and this was meant to show 66%? Or 2/3. The bigger piece of the pie could have a pretty big influence on what your reader decides to do and the information you are giving them. If you're looking at something that spans time, you might want a line graph or a bar graph that gives the visual instantly of how this issue has grown. Or if you're trying to show them that it's not as big a deal as it used to be, how it has shrunk. The other way to present your statistics is as a percentage. Now, we discussed when you might not want to use the percentage. The example of the smaller percentage, even though the ratio sounded impressive. So when do you want to use the percentage? Well, you would want to use it in a case like this, where the percentages are large numbers that really catch your reader's attention. These percentages are closer to that 100 than our previous slide was. In this instance, it's the percentage that would grab your reader's attention and get them to pay attention. 7 out of 10 just doesn't sound as impressive as 70% does. The number seems bigger this way. Just like the one in the previous slide, 1 in 3, sounded bigger than the 33%. It's all about what tone you want to set. Are you trying to downplay a fact, or are you trying to get your audience to stand up and pay attention? That brings us to our last slide. Here there's a mingling of facts and information in the way that it's presented. You have 2 different percentages with a monetary value in the middle. The combination of these and the way they build up to that number that is closer to 100% is what keeps the audience's attention. You start with an average number, then hit them with a large dollar amount, and top it off with nearly 100%. This builds tension and momentum for your audience, even though what you're doing is presenting straight facts. Now that you have an idea of what some of the techniques are to present your information and how each one can set a different tone, I want you to reconsider the following questions. What caught your attention? Why did that particular part catch your attention? How did this presentation use a combination of ethos, pathos, and logos to keep you invested in what was being said? And how can you use the same types of techniques in your own writing? Were your answers slightly different this time around? Are you glancing back through your facts and thinking that maybe you could have presented this information from a slightly different modality to have a bigger impact on your audience? You aren't changing any facts. 33% is still 33%, which is still 1/3, which is still 1 out of every 3. Just like 70% is still 7 out of 10. And 75% is still 3/4, which is still every 3 out of 4. But the way you say it can and will impact the tone of your paper, which ultimately will influence your reader and their perspective on your topic. For those of you who are wondering how you can keep your audience's attention when you're presenting facts, this is definitely one of those ways. Do take into consideration how you're presenting your information and what kind of a tone it sets for your reader. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please do not hesitate to reach out using the LMS system. And definitely pause and think about how that information can be presented. Because everything that I read to you came from the research paper part. So it's not necessarily the slides that caught your attention. All right, guys, I'll catch you on the flip side. Thanks for watching.